Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Rob Turley, your host at Down the Rabbit Hole podcast, and with me I have a very special guest. This is Ben Hippeli. He is, how can I say this, a guru when it comes to, I hate that word, I shouldn't have used that word, but yeah, no, he's really good when it comes to social psychology and selling, and he teaches a lot of people how to do really amazing things, not just teaching people and businesses, he teaches students as well. He's an adjunct professor, so it's really awesome. So a more formal version of what it is that he does. Ben, please introduce yourself.
Rob, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So as an adjunct professor, I get a chance to work with tomorrow's future sales professionals and help them learn some of the things that you and I had to learn the hard way, right? By making mistakes and knocking on doors and getting our teeth kicked in. Help them learn that grit early so that they could be a couple of steps ahead of where you and I were when we graduated college. Then also take that same skill set and mindset and apply it to frontline sales, customer service professionals, so that they can hit the ground running in their new role, or if they need to just get better at their current role, make that happen as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like how you're doing something far more forward thinking in the sales industries when it comes to college, because what they teach you about sales in college usually, well, the traditional way was pretty much just garbage. Nonsense. It wasn't even a degree. It was just some half-assed experience going through some motion to get a stamp that says I could do stuff. So I really appreciate your approach on that because it's a real world approach, which is rare in the education industry. So awesome. Good work on that.
Thank you for that. And you know what? It has to be in sales, right? Think about it. If you're freshly graduated from college and you're calling on C-suite professionals, you've got to have that executive presence. You got to know what you're talking about. You got to handle the pressure to go along with it. And as much as I promote reading and learning new things, it doesn't take the place of practice, Rob. So we've got to get students out there practicing and meeting real professionals and getting that feeling in their gut early so they can learn from it and do better.
I love how you say that too, because if you read a book that was titled How to Sell to Chief Executives, and then you put that person who read the whole book, studied as best they could in front of an actual CEO, nope, it ain't gonna happen.
Hey, Rob, imagine getting on your next flight and the captain gets on the intercom and says, I've never actually flown a plane before, but I've read 2 or 3 books on it. In fact, I've read them twice. So let's go ahead and do this thing, right? You probably wouldn't feel very secure.
That would scare the living shit out of me. I would try to get off of there as fast as possible. Not going to lie. Yeah, no, it's all about the core competencies that people learn when they are driving their knowledge through experience. That's the biggest thing. Driving knowledge through experience is so important, and competency is translated in a lot of different ways, like we were talking about before. Competency is not just having the skills and having the knowledge. What does that even mean? Competency is much further than that, and often competency is driven by behavior.
Yeah, it is. So let's think about this. If sometimes it's easy to liken this to athletics, professional sports, right? So a lot of people out there can throw a football, can kick a soccer ball. They've got the skill to do that. And that makes up your competency. You got to have the skill. You got to have the knowledge of the game, the rules, what works, what doesn't. For sure, I don't think anyone can argue when it comes to competency, skills and knowledge are at the heart of that. But does that make you a professional athlete? Does that make you the best of the best? Coming off the Super Bowl, I won't name any names because I know sometimes that can be polarizing, but just think about any athlete out there that is truly the best of the best. And from skills, from knowledge, you got to go into your attitude. You got to go into your mindset, right? No athlete ever wins games by walking on the field going, man, there's just no way we're going to win this game. I mean, you've got to have that mindset and that attitude that's going to take you to the right place. But Rob, let me ask you this. Yeah. Have you ever worked with somebody who was pretty good, maybe at cold calling, pretty good at sales, but they were always just that cranky person that walked into the office and they held themselves back because of that? Have you seen that before?
Oh, I've seen it a million times. I've seen people just put themselves down to where they can't do it. I've said this 1,000 times before, but there are 2 truths in this world. There's I can and there's I can't. They're both synonymously true, but the one that you choose to believe is the one that is true to you. And that's what matters, because reality is perception.
All day long, man, all day long. And so then you get these people who have the skills, have the knowledge, have the wrong attitude, and they get mad when they don't get promoted to a leadership position. or they get mad and put the blame on somebody else if they miss a big sale. It's operations fault, somebody else's fault. So where's your competency if you have skills, knowledge, but your mindset, your attitude's in the wrong place?
Yeah,
Right?
it's in the application of knowledge. Knowledge is pretty much it's pretty much trivial until you can apply it. I mean, I can learn everything I can about rocket science, but if you put me into a room to build a rocket, most of the people, this is what Elon Musk was talking about. Why is the class called rocket science, where you learn physics and all that good stuff, and everything that has to do with the mathematics behind building a rocket, and you learn about rockets and all that stuff. But every single person who walks out of that PhD level class, none of them know how to actually build a rocket afterward. If you asked them to build a rocket, they wouldn't know how. Why isn't the class called How to Build a Rocket, where they actually build a rocket? Because guess what? You have to learn all that math to do it in the first place. And then they walk out with an actual competency. I am competent at building rockets because I learned to build rockets, not I read about them.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know what? You know who pays the price for that? The company pays the price for that, which then, of course, the consumers pay the price for that. So because you've got to take someone who has whatever graduate level and teach them to be real in the marketplace. Somebody who finishes their business degree and they go into a company thinking that they're going to run that company, and they have never actually practiced that. They've never actually led people or been led, and that's a recipe for disaster. So that mindset of how I'm going to utilize my skills, my knowledge is a huge determining factor in competency. And it goes on from there, Rob. Then we got to talk about our self-image, right? So as a company owner yourself, I have no doubt that you have woken up in the morning going, what the hell am I doing? Right? I've got this problem, this problem.
It comes with the job.
It absolutely does. You're like, what was I thinking? I really wanted to do this. And then you remember who you are. You remember your self-image is that somebody who solves problems, somebody who figures things out. And you very quickly stop whining and get into that mindset of your self-image of, well, this is just another problem, and I'm going to figure this out. And that's who I am. And so many professionals stop before they get to this point. Maybe
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the difference. When you own a company or if you're a leader, guess who everybody turns to? Everybody's problems are now your problems. If they cannot solve that problem, it's now your problem. You have to solve it. What are you going to do? Go up to your boss and ask, like, hey, what do I do about this problem? No, you're at the top, buddy. You got to figure this out, or no one's figuring it out.
Yeah, I recommend getting like a good heavy bag in your garage just so you can get some of that stress out, and then you can figure out how to solve these problems. You got to get the stress out.
That's what it's all about. I mean, I meditate personally. That's what I like to do. So just dig deep into your subconscious and let that all get sorted out. That's kind of how I do things. But yeah, that's a good way to do it too. I also shoot, so I go shooting. That's a great way, and it's not because shooting guns is violent. No, it's actually because it's a lot of focus. I do long range, so it's 400 yard 308. That's a whole different story. So it's extreme accuracy, balance, and just skill to get there, because you're going to have a lot of drop. You need to calculate wind, all that good stuff.
So both of those examples are based on focus, right? So whether it's meditation, visualization, journaling, all of that comes back to, who am I? What is my self-image? And it sounds fluffy, but when you take it into context of, I solve problems, I run this company, and this company is going to be successful. I'm going to figure out a way to get out of this and get into something better. When your mindset is in that place, now think how powerful that is as a sales professional. If someone tries to punch you in your teeth with an objection or with a price or a competitor comment, and you go, I'm a problem solver, I figure these things out, and you dig in a little bit deeper in the skills that you have, that is where you now take that self-image and turn it into the traits that make you who you are.
That's right. And selling past the no is one of the most powerful things you could do. If they haven't said no at least once, the sale's not going to be as strong. If they say yes right away, that is the truth, because now you're working with them. So one of the biggest weaknesses that I've seen out of anybody who is a part of any sales force is the ability to solutioning skills. That's exactly what we're talking about here, is that if you cannot solution, you cannot sell to executives. You need to be solving their problem actively with them. If you just have this great product, it's a trivial, what do they even, I don't even know the word for this. It's something where it's a novelty. it's like, oh, here's this really cool thing that can help you with this, this, and that. And we get these types of outcomes. And then it's like, oh, that sounds great and all, but I have this problem. It's just a novelty. That's all it is. And if they want to use it for novelty's sake, then you're probably going to have a really fast churn rate. People aren't going to last. They're not going to use it the way it was meant to be used or solve the problems that it was meant to solve. So that's part of the game right there.
Yeah, so well, I'm going to go a little classroom on you for this one, but I'll keep it real world. So when you're talking to the C-suite, Rob, there are 3.5 mission critical priorities that you have to make a connection to your solution, right? So you're talking about how do you solutionize, and it's got to be a business problem, right? You can't just solutionize on just at the front, at the tip of where you are. You got to get to what the business is trying to do. So there's 3.5 things you have to worry about. Okay, so in these mission critical priorities. And I say that half one because half one is regulatory. Now, whatever you're selling, that could be something regulatory that you're going to help fix that problem. And it's a very different conversation. But the first one is financial. So sometimes financial means you've got to save money. Sometimes it means you've got to increase your margin, right? So it just all depends on what that means in the C-suite. The next thing you have to worry about is market share. What's the company trying to do with their market share? How is your solution, no matter how far removed it is, going to impact that? So finance, market share, and then the other one is stakeholder satisfaction. What is it going to do for their customers, their employees, for their board members or shareholders? How are you going to affect that with your solution? So any of those 3.5 mission critical priorities, if you can't connect your product to that somehow, you're not going to be in a true solution setting. You're going to be selling a trinket, I think. Yeah, tiny word.
Exactly. And it's a novelty. It's a trinket.
It's like, okay, how about this? How about this pen with your logo on it? Even if you're selling water coolers, right? You've got to be able to connect it to one of those 3.5 mission critical priorities. And if you're not doing that, you're spinning your wheels.
That's true, because what do people care about? And that's the idea behind We FM. Everybody's brain is tuned into We FM, their favorite radio station. What's in it for me? And if you're not hitting those critical points, the what's in it for me isn't quite there. And also going further than that and saying, what will you benefit out of this? Not your company, but you. What will this do for you? Will this get you a promotion? Will this get you a raise? Will this increase your revenue? Will this get you the award you were looking for? So once you make it about them, truly about them, that's even more powerful too, because they're thinking, okay, if my company does well, then I do well. Well, give them the angle of, if you do well, what does your company give you? So what do I get? Then what do I get from there? And then what do I get from there? So you're making it about them. It's a good way to angle it. And I love how you said that. And solutioning is so important to get there. I am a solutions architect. I do solutions architecture. I do sales solutions architecture as well. So whether it's the more of the tech side of things, or if it's sales side of things, or what tech stack should you use, just overall solutions architecture in a business, how things need to fit together, how everything affects one another. And every business is really just a large network of cycles. Cycles start and then they end. Start, stop, and then they end. That's it. Start, stop, end. And then it's just a bunch of cycles happening within a giant system of cycles that makes up this giant complicated beast. But when you break it down to the little digestible morsels, anything that's crazy complicated is just a bunch of really simple little things working together. So if you can actually see it from that point of view, then that is the power behind doing solutions architectures, because you're breaking it down to see all the little minute issues, problems, seeing how they all connect, and then you can start solving things one thing at a time. And often when you solve one thing, it affects everything else.
So what you're saying is so on point. You've got the business acumen to make sense of that. What about somebody who's been selling for 2-3 years? Maybe they went to college, maybe they didn't. They're just now starting to learn a little bit about business and talking to C-suite. How do they break that down? Right? They're still freaking out because they're talking to somebody with a C in their title or VP in their title. And they've got to get that person to share important, valuable information so that they know how to problem solve. And that's a scary part about what's in it for me, is it's hard for me to think about what's in it for you because I'm so focused on me, right? So focused on what's in it for me. And so getting sales professionals, we always like to say, you've heard the expression, Rob, you've got to put yourself in your customer's shoes.
Right? I'm actually teaching my sales team how to do this right now. Yeah. So I teach it. It's not all that complicated. It's just following a guide. It's not steps, because it's not ask this question and then, okay, now go to the next one. Ask that question. No, there could be a lot of questions added with it.
Painful.
But really, it
Yeah.
all starts with the what, or what is it for? Okay. Or the what and what do you use it for? What is it for? The why is what it follows. And then how is it implemented? What's the current outcome that you're getting? What is the desired outcome? What have you been doing to improve, to work toward your desired outcome and results? And then taking each of those moving parts and then breaking them down further and further, saying why. Well, what are you doing for that? Well, what is that tied to? Well, how come you think that? Breaking it down and actually documenting it, and you're creating an actual diagrammatic architecture of an entire process. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's tech or whatever else, you break it down to diagrammatic process, see how everything connects, and then you connect all the dots from there, and you can see a systems network. And now that is your business broken down into the tiniest little chunks. The fun part about it is that if they're having, let's say, a targeting issue, that's the core issue. It's a targeting issue. And you find that out by breaking it down. If any other company is having a targeting issue, you can pretty much take that. So it's a problem architecture. And then what you do is you create the solution architecture after. So you take the problem architecture. If another company, no matter what they sell, what they do, what industry they're in, if their problem is targeting, you could pretty much copy and paste that exact architecture, because all businesses in the end are exactly the same. Seeing it from a holistic point of view is a whole different thing. What are it's a group of people working toward a mission, a vision, and a purpose, you'd hope. And they're working together to make this happen, to deliver a product or a service so that they can continue to make money. So do services for things in return. And they need to create demand. They need to market. They need to advertise. They need to operate. So operations, they need to have human resources or people services. And they need to have a hierarchy to delegate work down. And so that people can be at different levels so that the structure works. So it's just this giant, big, ugly beast. But then in the end, when you break it down, they're all exactly the same.
Yeah, those patterns are definitely the same over and over again.
I
The
see
one
the world in
thing,
patterns. That's my sickness.
yeah, well, no, those patterns are critical, and can be so useful as you're putting together that solution architecture. So here's one of the challenges. Tell me if you're seeing this with your sales team, is how do you put that personal component to that, right? So the way you just broke that down, if you're talking to a C-suite, he or she is going to get it. They're going to understand what you're saying. They're going to appreciate the fact that you can see it the same way that she sees it. How do you get your newer sales team to get the C-suite or the VPs to talk like that, right? To give that information so they can put that architecture together. What's the
All
secret?
you have to do is ask. You need to be direct. You need to ask. You need to show genuine concern. And you need to know what you're doing and how to navigate those waters. First and foremost, what you have to learn is how the structures work, how to break things down. I train people by putting them in the solutions architect's shoes and then putting them into the prospect or customer shoes. They're both sides. You have to come up with a business that has a problem currently, just make it up on the spot. You have a couple of data points to go off of, and then break it down from there. So say, well, what is it? So you have to play the solutions architect who's asking the questions, and you need to be answering the questions as well. And then you do that over and over again in different situations and build out those architectural diagrams. From there, you build the solutions diagrams and find different ways to do that. Because even though you made up the problem, if someone's having a similar problem in business, which a lot of businesses are, there's only a handful of issues that you could possibly be having. I mean, really, when you really break it down, there's like 10 to 12 things.
Every customer you talk to says, "Oh, it's different for me. My problem."
Oh no, but
that's
what you have to say. I absolutely understand. Like, okay, so you learn all about them, you ask them about them, you have them talk about their business, and all you have to do is just adopt their language and terminology and do the same process cookie cutter over and over again, because they're all exactly the same, but you have them feel as if they're being treated with the utmost care and understanding of their business. And since you're breaking it down like that, using their terminology, they think you're an expert in their industry, even if you know nothing about it. But the secret, you don't have to know anything about it. All the answers are right in front of you, the person you're talking to.
They will tell you everything you need to know. So one of the key factors, so just this one little key ingredient to get all what you just said to happen, you talk about putting yourself in their shoes, understanding their business. One of the things that we see over and over again with salespeople is that they have a hard time doing that because they can't let go of their own shoes, right? And if you try to put on a pair of shoes while you're wearing your own shoes, doesn't matter what different sizes they are, it's pretty much impossible. And that's what happens when salespeople are worried about their commission, worried about, what are the questions I'm going to ask next? How do I explain this to my boss if I don't close them? They're so focused on those things that they forget to put themselves in the other shoes. They forget to listen and look for those windows of opportunity, like you just said, that tells them everything they need to know. Do you ever get a chance to listen to like demo recordings of your team or maybe even other teams?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And you're listening to them, and the salesperson just lets these windows of opportunity fly
Missed
by
opportunity,
them.
missed opportunity, missed opportunity, and then pushed when you shouldn't have pushed. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh God, it hurts sometimes.
Are you kidding me? So when we do that at work, one of the things that the team and I benchmark like to do is just to listen to the first little bit of the recording. So if it's an hour-long demo, usually it's about 15 minutes. If it's a 30-minute demo, we'll listen to like the first 5 or 10. And then we like to predict what's going to happen at the end of it before we listen to the rest of the recording. And we are right easily 8 out of 10 times just by listening to the windows of opportunity that the salesperson's missing.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And those things can be seen if you see it from more of a, so I think in networks, pretty much. Networks.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how the
you do.
brain works. It's not linear thinking, it's actually network thinking. So things don't actually align. So I struggle personally with thinking in a chronological order because time is not relevant in that order. It doesn't matter when it happened. It happened, whether it was 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago, or 2 hours ago, it makes no difference. It's just that it's in the past and it happened. When it happened is not relevant. It matters why it happened and what you did to prevent and or promote what did happen as a follow-up. So the when is not important. And if more people understood that the when is not important, when did this problem happen? You don't need to know. It's about the problem happened and it's currently happening. It's current. If they're talking about
Yeah.
the problems, it is current. It doesn't matter when it started. It's not relevant. You're just digging up dirt at that point and making them feel upset. So that will make them uncomfortable. This is what's happening. When did it start? Doesn't matter. Just this is happening. We're going to fix this and we could fix this today.
Yeah, and get them to feel empowered by doing that. So as you think about bringing solutions to the table, there's one thing that prospects want. So you think about any prospect, any company in a B2B setting, and they're talking to their salesperson. We're figuring out what solutions are going to help with their problems. There's one thing that they want, and that is they want to make sure that whatever decision they make is not going to make them look stupid in front of their team. And that's true for CEOs. That's true for frontline managers. They want to know that they can trust you enough, trust your company enough to go into this and not look like a dumbass at the end of it. And that's a big responsibility on our shoulders as sales professionals.
People buy from people that they like, trust, and can relate to. If you don't meet those criteria, you're talking to the wrong people. In the end, the account doesn't really matter. It matters who you're talking to. In the end, talking to the targeting and talking to the budget holder first often isn't who you want to talk to. You need to champion somebody. The person who has the ability to swipe the card or write the check is often not the person, more often than not, that you want to talk to because they're just trying not to spend money. That's the point. That's why they're the budget holder.
That's why
Don't
they have
talk to
that.
them.
Yeah, and I'll challenge you on that. So we always look at whether you're talking to a one-man show or talking to a 20,000 employee company. There's the 3 personas you've got to engage. And so again, if it's a one-man show, there's still 3 personas. So you got to get in front of that person who's holding the credit card. Like you got to get there. But a lot of us think, to your point here, Rob, hey, if I get to the CEO, I'm in, I'm golden. That's the only person I need to talk to, and that's wrong. Right, I've got to talk to the end users. I've got to talk to the influencers and champions, because if I don't get all 3 on the same page, there's going to be an imbalance, and it's going to be really difficult to get a yes.
Yep. As of 2020, after that happened, of course, there are now, instead of 9, there are now an average of 11 influencers that are part of the deciding factor that directly influence any deal while selling to an enterprise company. Anybody who didn't know that, you're welcome. Anybody who did know that, congratulations. You're one of the 0.01%.
And what you're saying is so true. And they're all different levels too. So here's what's crazy. So we've had a client that we're coaching through a pretty big sale, about a 4-month sales cycle, and he's prepping for a meeting. And he's like, "Hey Ben, there's going to be 15 people at this meeting," and he was just like, "What am I going to do?" But we've got to get used to that sales environment. because no one wants to look stupid, Rob. I mean, nobody wants to look dumb. Again, whether it's a CEO or frontline manager, everyone in between, they don't want to make a decision, pull the trigger on something because A, it was cheaper, B, the salesperson did a great job convincing me. They don't want to do that and then look stupid in front of their colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a gold mine. If 15 people were coming to my meeting, I'd be like, damn, they're fucking sold. Like, that's it. Like, that's it right there. That's the deciding factor. That's like the board right there.
All
But
day, all day
that's
long.
fantastic. I mean, I love getting ganged up on. I think it's a lot of fun because you get to play off of so many personalities and you can stroke the ego of the right people. You can see how they affect each other. You can read their faces and understand what you're saying and who is how it's affecting who each person is and what you need to say next to appease each person. It's almost like a challenge. It's a puzzle and it's a lot of fun.
Hey, you know what's cool about what you just said is that when you do a good job at it, it's that much more powerful, right? So they know it's hard for you, and whether you're team selling, whatever you're doing, if you can handle that room, every single person knows each other in that room. They know who's a jerk and who's not, who's going to ask the analytical questions and who's not. So when they watch you handle that and handle like a champ, now going back to what I was saying earlier, they feel like, okay, this guy's not going to embarrass us. This guy's not going to make us look stupid when we make this decision.
And it gives you the opportunity to say, okay, what's in it for me? If I was in the shoes of the CFO, if I was in the shoes of the CEO, if I was in the shoes of the CMO, if I was in the shoes of the director of BD, if I was in the shoes of the CRO over there. So now you can literally give value to each individual person, give that, like, what's in it for me to each individual. And you can say, and Frank, you're going to benefit from this in this way, that way, and that way. That's directly going to affect Kevin's issue over there and help improve on that. And then with Kevin's issue improving, then, Samantha's problems are going to completely go away. Then you can tie the whole thing together. And that's part of the solutions architecture right there. So much fun. And you can literally solve the problem step by step, appeasing every single person. And you could see the relief on each person's face whenever it's awesome.
Yeah, so I want to add to that. So you see the relief. So as Samantha and each person realizes that everyone's problem's being fixed, they see that value. So that's the key of having that group there. But we got to be aware of that. So what happens if the average sale is going to take 11 decision makers and I'm honed on just one, and I'm missing out on those opportunities to go through what you just did.
Yep. And then what I would recommend is finishing on the ROI or the profit right at the end. If it's a room full of people, if you have a CRO or a CFO there, so appease everybody and then just boom, drive the end of it with what's the return. And then that's when the CRO or the CFO is just like, oh, okay, yeah, we got this.
So if I take that to a step further on that, so I love that, how saving that for the end, get the CRO to see it. Ideally, if you can get somebody else to say that, right? So get one of those 15 people to figure out the math just on the back of a napkin right then, or get the CFO to really push it. And she says, wait, if this happens, we just saved this much money, or we just increased our margin by this. You get them to say it, and now you're in.
Well, yeah, they're doing your thinking for you. You can have the crowd do the work for you. And that's the best part about it. I mean, even good comedians have the crowd do the work for you. That's like the biggest thing. That means you're going to be a successful comedian if you get the crowd to work for you. And that's why it's called crowd work. It's the same thing in a sales meeting. You have, except, you kind of have a captive audience in business. It's not so much like that. And they want you to win. With comedians, they want you to fail horribly. So it's terrifying. So I actually do stand-up comedy.
Rob, I was just going to ask you, please tell me that you used to be a stand-up comedian, but it sounds like you still are.
I do it for fun. So I was never like an actual comedian, but I just I do it for fun when they have open mics and stuff like that. Let me tell you what, I can stand in front of I could be like not even behind a podium, just completely out in the open in a room full of 250 CEOs. And I am as comfortable as I could possibly be. You get up into a room in front of 100 drunk people who want you to fail. Terrifying. Trying to be consistently
I don't believe that
funny.
For a second. Oh my gosh. First off, everyone listening to this podcast is not surprised that we can put you in front of 200 CEOs and not sweat it. But I have a feeling you can hold your own with a bunch of drunk people too.
Oh no, my fear of public speaking ended by doing that. It's humiliating. If you screw it up and you're failing and they are just, it's humiliating. Absolutely.
Hey, Rob, where do I go to see some of this stand-up you've been doing?
Oh no, it's not on the internet anywhere. I made sure.
Ah, come on.
Oh yeah, I am actively making sure of that.
Not what any of us want to hear. That's classic. We'll
I've got
find
a very dark,
it.
crude sense of humor, so it wouldn't really fit. So I have to be careful about that stuff. I don't want to insult anybody, so that's what it is. But you know, maybe one day I can lighten it up a little bit. But it's the way that I do it is really psychological comedy, right? So it's playing on people's emotions where they hate you one minute, they love you the next type of a thing. That's what I do. So it can piss off a lot of people and it can make a lot of people happy at the same time, like literally at the same time. So it gets pretty interesting. But I would like to dive a little bit into so more of going into the competency side of things and the psychological side of things. We have kind of delved a little bit deeper into the psychology behind it, but behind competency, what psychology outside of just a positive mindset? Because I mean, the definition of luck is pretty much just luck is driven by just a positive mindset. And people who feel lucky are lucky because it's complete fallacy. It's a made up thing. So they are lucky because they feel good. And it's that positivity. Outside of that, though, what other competencies would you consider a psychological competency?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you start with that mindset to get you there. The other part is your delivery. So you've heard the expression executive presence or the phrase executive presence,
Of course.
right? So when you're standing in front of a room of drunk people, or you're standing in front of a room of CEOs, that body language, that tone, the way you respond to a heckler, in the comedy crowd, but also in the business crowd, like that negative person who wants to try to show you off right in front of everybody. The way you respond to that is made up of your executive presence. And so starting off with the mindset to get you in the right place, right? So thinking of all those competencies that make that up. But then you've got your knowledge base and the trust. You mentioned the things that people want when they're going to sell from you, and trust was the one that stuck out the most. So how do you
Trust and
prove
validation. Those are the top two.
oh my gosh, all day long, all day long. So how do you how do you walk into a room, show your competency, show that you're trustworthy, and show that you know how to communicate on an adult to adult level just by walking in the room? It's based on what you wear, how you carry yourself, the eye contact that you make, and all of the ingredients of social psychology that make up executive presence is
I was about to say, man,
yeah.
that you know that feeling that you get when someone walks into the room and you're just like, wow, I need to know them. Like, you know what, you can feel it. That is
Yes.
executive presence at its finest right there. And that's from being confident, having a positive self-image, believing in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, other people don't believe in you. Because the reason people believe in you is because you believe in yourself. Don't ever say that's not a complete causative. It is.
Oh, all day
But
long. Yeah,
so I'm
again,
saying, like,
think
the
about that.
listeners, man, I know that you know that, but the listeners, it's your choice. It is your choice. But that's that feeling that people get, is that you're holding yourself high, you know, your back's up straight, and you are just carrying yourself, and you're like, I can do this. I get shit done. I can do this. I'm a problem solver. I can do anything that I set my mind to, and I know that I am a beautiful human being that is going to make a difference in this world. If all that's going through your head, people can literally feel it. You bleed it.
It blows my mind. I mean, it absolutely blows my mind. Now, I wish I knew this when I was like in high school and dating, but I didn't. And you definitely kind of learn it later. But you're so right. It's going back to competency, right? That's self-image. Who are you? You define who you are. And so many people make that definition incorrectly. And so you incorporate that with the trust variables, right? So just whether it's your knowledge base, the social trust that you bring with you wherever you go, just by your posture and who you are, and people who know you. And then going back to your transactional analysis is probably something worth touching on real quick. Making sure that when you're talking to somebody, you are maintaining an adult to adult communication, as opposed to trying to overstep them or letting them overstep you. Right?
Oh my
Both of
God. Yeah. So to get a little bit into that, you know how mirroring someone is really important? You probably know that term. If anybody doesn't know the
oh yeah,
term
absolutely,
listening,
definitely.
is mirroring someone is that the way when you start talking to somebody, you do the introductions, you start kind of getting into it. The way that they are speaking is that you want to mirror the way that they're speaking back to them to show that you are an equal to them. That's the point. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a CEO and you're just an SDR. It's irrelevant. You should be mirroring them, because if you mirror them, you are their equal. Titles don't mean anything. It's a grouping of words after someone's name to give someone an idea of what part of the company they do, or what kind of what responsibilities that they have, or whatever else
Yeah.
it may be. That's all it is. It's a fabricated piece of nonsense. So it doesn't matter in the end. It's just another human being who's trying to solve a problem, who either has more responsibilities or less responsibilities.
So I want to challenge everyone listening to this podcast that's new in their career. And Rob, you may or may have seen this in action. I'm sure you have. So you take a young sales professional who has executive presence, right? So a 20-something going up against a 60-year-old, right, who's been in the business. She's owned the company for 30 years. She knows what she's doing. And that SDR, whether it's making a phone call or an account executive coming in person, pre and post COVID, if they are showing executive presence, that CEO is, because of the age gap, is actually going to give them some extra points. Whenever
That is
you
so
see,
true.
oh, absolutely. So I get some young sales professionals say, "How am I supposed to go into the C-suite and they're going to eat me alive?" And the truth is, if you have executive presence, they will actually give you bonus points because of your age and how hard you're working and what you're doing to show that you know your stuff when you walk in that office. So
Exactly.
age is actually not an excuse for failure. If anything, it's a bonus. I wish I could be 25 again, walking to the C-suite with that executive presence, because it helped me get more sales done than the people on my team that were older than me.
Yeah, and you have the knowledge. If you have the knowledge, you have the confidence, you have the self-image, the executive presence, and you walk in there, you're going to be just fine. They don't even see age. I mean, I'm a living example. How old do you think I am?
God, I don't know, Rob. So probably about 30.
I'm 25.
That was close.
So I'm 20.
Plus or
I'm a,
minus.
I'm a 20 something who has executive presence, who also owns a company, who also
Yeah.
teaches people how to sell and does solutions architecture. Sure, my brain runs at a million miles a minute, but that might be part of it, but that's not really what it is. It's that I can carry myself and I'm quick at adapting. That's all it is. I carry myself. I'm a quick learner. I'm quick at adapting, and I am no stranger to change. I actually support change. I am an agent of change, as I like to call it. That's what these young professionals need to learn to do, is that they just need to learn to pivot quickly, to change, to be open to new things, and to make decisions. Don't just sit there and mull it over. Oh, I don't know if I want to do it. It's just indecisiveness is the poisonous thing that destroys people's ability to become a leader. Is that you need to be decisive, you need to take action, and you do not react, you respond. That's the difference.
Yeah, so I love that executive presence component and putting all that together. And so many people want to use their age, their young age, as an excuse as to why they can't do something. So Rob, if you're not a model to crush that thought process for people to realize I can be 25 and own a company. I was in that same situation in my first endeavor, and you can do it. And it goes back to that self-image. You say, okay, I'm going to be successful in this. I know there's going to be tons of bumps and bruises along the way, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that at the end of this path, there's success. And you can be 20, 25, you could be 60. But until you get your self-image and your mindset in that game, you're stuck.
Yeah, and when, if I may ask, did you learn about this? When did you learn the idea and actually truly grasp the idea of executive presence?
So I didn't know it was called executive presence till several years ago. But when I first started my own business, we were in fitness sales. So we sold personal training and weight loss. And every time I had to show somebody around, right, or meet with a potential member that was wearing a tie, I'm embarrassed to say this out loud, actually, that if they were wearing a tie, I froze. It was just like my kryptonite. Now you got to
Really?
keep in mind that was the top of the top salesperson. Wrote the sales process of what we did. I was 20 years old, super successful in sales. But I would walk up to somebody wearing a tie, and it was just kryptonite, completely over. And I started to realize that when I faked my way to using the same skills that I used for someone not wearing a tie, that when I took those and wore them with someone who was wearing a tie, it actually worked even better. And that was about a year and a half learning curve of again, getting punched in the teeth like we all have to sometimes. but a 1.5 year learning curve to go, oh shoot, it's all the same thing. And my executive presence is up to me, not up to whatever that person's wearing.
Yeah. And that also speaks to what you wear does matter. As much as people say, don't judge a book by its cover, humans are genetically wired to do that because guess what?
Thank you.
Guess
Yes,
what?
we are.
When there's danger, we need to run. And when there's danger and we need to run, or if we're hurt or if we've gotten hurt, adrenaline starts pumping. So you have superhuman strength and speed and everything like that because of the adrenaline to get out of there as quickly as possible because you're panicking due to anxiety. Anxiety is something that is a prehistoric, pretty much. It's a prehistoric reaction to whatever's happening around you that you don't fully understand or cannot control to protect your body from getting, well, either killed or damaged in some way.
Think about it, the patterns of an animal, right? The different style of fruits. We learn to not eat those fruits based on the way that they're categorized, the way they grow, so that we don't die, right? So you're right. So we are wired to do that. And so to break it as simple as possible, you take our lizard brain, right? So this is outside of our executive function. And this is that gives us the very first reaction to take when we see a snake, right? When we see a dog chasing us. And that's our quick reaction. That reaction is made about a 1/2 second before our executive brain ever even gets that information. So we've already decided what's going to happen when we see that bear right in front of us. But to your point, when we see somebody in a suit, we see somebody in a nice car, we see somebody in a big office, our lizard brain takes over and says, oh, oh my gosh, this person's better than me. And until we purposely train our executive function to say, wait a second, they're not better than me. And in fact, if I show how good I am, they're going to appreciate it because that's what people in leadership do. We have to consciously make that decision through our executive function.
It's mindset manifestation. It's the more you can control your mind, the better, because that fear or whatever else it is, whatever you're feeling, that's a reaction. You can learn to respond. And what that really is, it's I wouldn't quite call it executive presence because that's just you being in a room. I would call it a proper way of actually controlling your chemical releases in your brain.
Yeah.
If you get an epinephrine, you can counteract it with serotonin. You can create those chemicals at will. It's just that, are you in tune enough with yourself and your own mind to be able to control it? It is a choice. It's just that if you don't have the mental capacity, not mental capacity, it's not about intelligence. It's just, if you don't have the self-awareness and self-understanding and connection to yourself, then changing those chemicals at your own will becomes impossible. And that's why most people always react, because they are not trained to respond. They have not trained their mind to be able to respond.
So that's a great point there. And kind of coming full circle back to, you've got to practice, you've got to get through the grit. So if you've studied any of the training that Navy SEALs go through, you'll know that the studies have shown that before they go into an operation, like literally as they're jumping off the helicopter or the plane, their heart rate goes down. Right? Where you and I would be, I don't know about you, but I would be completely frozen and scared out of my mind. My heart rate would be, bouncing through my chest. Theirs goes down. And that's because they are trained. They're trained in that environment. They're trained to be prepared for this and how to do this. They know how to expect the unexpected, and they live it. And our sales teams have to do the same thing, right? They've got to go out there and experience that stress and how to stay calm under that pressure. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves freezing at times when they can't afford to be.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And speaking of the plane thing, I was the only person with a smile on my face before I jump out. So the first time I went, I was with some people to go skydiving, and I was the only one. Everybody was freaking out, panicking. You should have seen the fear and everything. And I was sitting there I was just smiling, looking around like, guys, are you ready for this? Come on, it's gonna be great. Just like, but yeah, no, it's I'm a thrill seeker though, 100%. It's a lot of fun. You never feel more alive than when you jump out of a plane at 24,000 feet. It gets crazy.
I could only imagine there, Ron.
Yeah, no, I think you'd like it. It's a lot of fun. Well, after you do it the first time, it's different though. Like it's a hell of a time, but it's not for everybody that much. But on that note, we are out of time here. But I want to say thank you, Ben, so much for coming here and having this conversation, because there's so much value for young professionals or for people who are executives with the conversation that we had.
Absolutely. Definitely my pleasure being here. Always great talking to you, and hope to have me back again.
For sure. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. This is Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. I'm your host, Rob Turley, co-founder, co-CEO at White Rabbit Intel. And this podcast was brought to you by, you guessed it, White Rabbit Intel. So please follow DTRH podcast, hashtag DTRH podcast, and please follow hashtag sales enablement, as well as hashtag follow the White Rabbit. That'll be great. And you can find us on pretty much any streaming platform. So thank you so much. And I will see everybody who's tuned in here next week. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Down the Rabbit Hole podcast for new episodes weekly on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and YouTube. If you'd like to apply to be featured on the podcast or recommend a featured guest, please feel free to email us at theteam@whiterabbitintel.com.